On this episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast, we're talking with Jason Brick about all things safety.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Joel.
yes. Andy, hello.
So right before this episode recorded, Joel tried to hand crank some coffee in the mic there. Oh, man.
Don't worry. It's going to get better. I'm going to produce this sound well. And next time, I'm going to take everybody through my special coffee making process. All the sounds.
All the sounds.
All the sounds.
We should make a coffee making podcast. Just the sounds.
No smells, all sounds.
We could,
That'll be the name of the podcast. No smell, all sound.
wow. That's you got me going.
Yes.
Oh, Joel, how are you doing?
Man, Andy, I'm doing well. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for asking. Super excited about the conversation that we're going to have here in just a few minutes. We did, Andy, you called it a collaboration episode.
Yeah. So this episode is going to be collaboration. So our friend Jason Brick runs a podcast called The Safest Family on the Block. And we decided we were going to do, a show for each other. And then I said to him, like sometime this week, I said, hey, Jason, how about we just do like one collab?
Work smarter,
right?
Not harder.
Instead of recording for 4 hours a night, we can just record for 2.
Bingo.
And so he said, that's perfect. So we recorded this episode, and the interview that you're going to hear coming up right after this, right after we stop talking and shut up, you will hear the interview with Jason. That's going to be on his podcast and ours. So, yeah.
Wow, the power of collaboration, Andy. I mean, that's really what makes this show go around. You and I collaborating, us collaborating with other people, people collaborate and listen. So much collaborate and listen. Oh my gosh. Well, hey, Andy, I'm super excited about this episode, and look forward to sharing it with everybody. So, and now here is our friend Jason Brick.
All right, guys. We first off want to say this is going to be a collaboration show. So our guest tonight, I can't really say guest because we're on each other's show. But Jason Brick, welcome to our show, and we'll welcome ourselves to your show.
We'll welcome ourselves.
Hi, gents.
So
I'm really glad to be here.
So Jason, tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your podcast? What's it about?
Sure. My podcast is Safest Family on the Block, and it came from, I spent the first half of my adult life as a martial arts instructor, security consultant, did a little bodyguard work, a little bouncing work, that kind of thing. And then when my kids were school-aged and running a karate school, which is an evenings and weekends job, meant I didn't get to see them enough, I transitioned to journalism for the next half of my life.
Okay.
And about 3 years ago, I combined the two of those into this podcast where I take my journalistic experience and my security expertise, and I interview anybody who will talk to me about any aspect of child and family safety. So one week it'll be a CIA agent talking about spotting bad guys. The next week it'll be a suicide counselor about signs and prevention. And the next week it'll be a nutritionist.
Okay, great. And then a little bit about us. We're the Dudes and Dads podcast. We have a weekly or bi-weekly show that we talk to pretty much whoever, too, that we think has a great story. So our topics range from, Joel, we range from a lot of different things.
Smoking brisket.
Pretty much anything, yeah.
Pretty much anything. Yep.
So tonight we wanted to talk a little bit tonight about safety, because that's, again, what your podcast is about. And so let's start off the topic. What is safety to you as far as your family goes?
Well, there's that, I always forget who it was originally attributed to, and it gets misattributed about half the time I see it. But a quote about how having a child means spending the rest of your life with your heart running around outside your body. Mm-hmm. That, as dads, that you didn't know what being afraid was until you had a kid. Yeah. It's just a whole new level of fear. And safety is keeping our kids alive, keeping them healthy, keeping them happy, and hopefully, with the long game, teaching them the skills that they need to keep themselves safe and healthy when they're out on their own in their own lives, their own kids, without becoming paranoid or fearful.
Definitely. Joel, what would you say it is for you?
Well, I think maybe this is the controversial part of the show. I would say always, like, we want to keep our kids safe. So when I'm thinking about safety, I'm thinking about all the same things. I'm thinking about anymore. We've had conversations about it recently about online safety, digital safety, like what they're being exposed to in the across the internets. Also, but just in terms of like things we do. Andy and I are both gun owners, and it's like how we keep those things safe and talk to our kids about those things that around the house that could hurt them, and so it's like those sort of things. And at the same time, I as a counselor and as a coach, like, I often find people there can also be unhealthy obsessions with safety. Because as I always like to say, we're only chasing safety, which is a great title for a post-hardcore band back in the year 2000. So for me, it's always this balance of talking about safety, because for the longest time and doing youth work and things like that. Came across a lot of families that are obsessed with safety at the expense of the welfare of their children. So we're trying to walk that line well in a healthy way. I'm sure. So maybe that's something we can dive into. But anyway, yep.
And I would say for me, same type of things. I'm trying to keep my kids safe as far as what could, and not just kids but family, what could come in to our house. Again, like you said, Joel, being a gun owner, it's something that I'm taking seriously as far as like that safety in the house. I don't, I've trained all of my kids really well as far as how to be safe with a gun. We've taken all of the older three have been through hunter's ed. They know, all about safety. In fact, sometimes they're more safe than I am with that gun. Sometimes I'll go to take it from them and they'll be like, wait, you have to say, thank you and you're welcome and things before you grab it out of my hands. And sometimes that's stuff that I forget. So for me, it's about I would say protecting them, as well as, when I'm out and about, and also teaching them for internet safety. I myself am an IT professional. And so for me, I'm teaching them, my oldest two boys have just recently got Instagram. The three oldest kids have phones, but the boys have Instagram. So I, went through the fact of, don't put something online that you don't want anyone to see forever, because even if you delete it, it may be out there forever. As well as, don't friend people that you don't know in real life. Made sure to make their profiles, private and so that they have to have, they have to actually friend somebody before they can see it. And so we make that priority, as well as even checking in on their phones. We've said, these are your phones as far as they're yours, but they're also ours. Like, we provide them for you. And so we have an opportunity to grab that at any time and look at it and see what you're looking at and who you're friends with too. So that's kind of a nutshell as far as safety for me.
Yeah. Do you guys do one of those formal phone agreements with your kids?
No, we have not. Tell me.
Oh, yes. Tell us more.
Oh, okay. So I got this idea from a woman named Kat Code, who is one of the smartest people working in internet safety today. And I applied it with my youngest child. My oldest, I've got a 22-year-old and a 12-year-old. Okay. So, I've got the rough draft and the finished copy. But I only heard about this idea in time to get the youngest one, who just got his first phone, and it's a formal written document, which is a contract with that defines, okay, well, here's the phone you're going to get. Mom and dad are going to pay for it. Dad's going to pay for it. Mom's going to pay for it. Whoever's going to pay for it. And then there's a section of your commitments as the parents. Things like, we will respect your privacy within these boundaries. If you text us the code word, we're going to come get you and save the day, and we're not going to lecture you until the next morning. All of those, right? And then a section of the kids' responsibilities and commitments about things like, won't use it in the bathroom, won't use it in the bedroom, won't give personal contact information out to people, whatever your policy is on sexting and nudes. As the kids get older, of course, that policy changes. And then a section of, okay, what's going to happen if one of you breaks the rules?
Sure.
Right. And it's important to have those rules for the kid as well as the rules for the parents. One of mine is I have a bad habit of texting while driving. And so when we signed it up, I put, okay, I won't text and drive. And if he catches me, he gets to pick the music for the rest of the trip. And that's just right there in the contract. So it can be lighthearted, but it kind of teaches your kid a little bit about contracts and contract law. And B, it's written down, it's all written down. It's very clear. And then for me, one of the real powers of it is when they screw up, because our kids always will screw up, we get to sit down and it's the contract that's the bad guy. It's like, well, this is what it says. My hands are tied. Your hands are tied. So what are we going to do?
Right.
Together.
You signed this
as a
contract
team?
and I signed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how are we going to make this less miserable for you? Because it ain't going to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding it was a really good idea. And we'll see, we'll know in 6 months or a year how well I executed it.
Sure. Joel, how about for you? You guys have talked a little bit. None of your kids currently have phones, correct?
Correct. Yes. And as I said, we're holding out as long as possible. We had our last guest on, like, hey, the question was asked, how long are we going to go? And it's like, as long as absolutely possible, without them having it. And, and we're in a situation right now where my eldest will be 13 here next here in November. So, we're kind of like, we're in this place where we've done just fine we've done fine without those things. But the day is coming. I like the contract understanding and laying out. I think, and we've said it so many times here on this show, so many of the things, many of the conversations that we need to have with our kids, it's a matter of just have the conversation. Make sure it's done. Make sure the expectations are clearly laid out, because it is cruel and unusual punishment to hold anybody, our kids or otherwise, accountable to expectations that were not clearly laid out. And so the contract idea is fantastic. I always like you said, make the contract the bad guy. Put that out there in front of them. There's just I really want to in all of this, and I know, Andy, I think you're in the same boat here. I'm not looking to have guilt or shame come into the equation here when we're talking about these things, but rather rightly pacing and with our kids and knowing, because it's always like, I want our kids to know that there are things out there that can harm them. There are people out there that do seek ill. That is a reality, and yet. There's not a boogeyman behind every bush, and and they don't have to live in fear, but nevertheless to be cautious and things like that. So I think we're at the early stages. We've got a lot of controls on things. Everything is kind of, because our kids are still very much within the nest kind of deal. But with more freedom comes more responsibility.
Right.
So.
Yeah. That's actually why we ended up getting our youngest's phone at this time, where he's got a parkour class that's a half a mile from the house, and he's wanted to start walking there with a friend. And that was like his first kind of real big regular out of the house unsupervised, where he's going to show up somewhere that I won't hear immediately if he didn't show up, kind of thing. So, hey, here's your little here's your tracker that you can also use to text your friends. But that kind of striking that balance of allowing that freedom while having that extra, that guardrail on there as well.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit about safety in the house. How do we keep our house safe? Jason, let's start with you here. What do you guys do for safety in your own house?
So a lot of training, martial arts junkie. And so I was a big deal. One thing, for example, we do is our fire extinguishers are the $20 Home Depot fire extinguishers. They're not the high-end professional ones that need recharging. So every year just before the 4th of July, we go build a campfire in the backyard and blow out all of the old fire extinguishers. Gotcha. Everybody in the family uses them, and then we replace them with a new set. So, all of our kids have been, and, if you've never seen a 4-year-old with his goggles and gloves on putting out a campfire with fire extinguisher, that is the happiest human being on the planet for about 10 seconds, right? And so we do a lot of those things. When they were younger, we talked about things. I had a mentor in the martial arts who was very big on home safety and invented some games to send home with his young students. So we played a lot of those. One had a little big like red dot sticker, and you give them to your toddler to run around and put them on the things in the house that they think might be a hazard, and then talk about that. So why did you think this might be a hazard? And sometimes it's completely sensical, sometimes it's completely nonsensical. And then later on, you play an iteration where the parent does it and catches the one they miss. And so using games and what-if scenarios, just talking about things and playing in ways that prepare them without making it scary.
Gotcha. Joel, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think about I think probably it's the meetup spots. Like if there's a fire, like how are we exiting the house, and where are we going to meet? What are we going to do? We talked about that. We've also just talked about not playing with fire. And Andy and I joke. So Andy and I both have Boy Scouts, and they're taught how to handle fire, how to make fires in a safe way, and what's not, and that there are actual consequences if they fail to abide by certain commands and all that. So it's been a little bit comforting to me, and my son's going to hear this show, so he's going to know what I'm talking about. He's the one. He has always most naturally been interested in starting things on fire. And so I just take a little bit of solace knowing that other men who are trustworthy, including Andy, have overseen some of his education in those things. It's like I think as with anything, they're just so many that having the conversations and thinking through. I mean, just thinking through. Really, the high probability stuff that's gonna happen. We obviously have like carbon monoxide detectors in the house, right? Whatever, and we've even but see ours go off. They go off when the batteries get low, right? And whatever. And I will say we've had kids probably freak out a few times, like because they go off inevitably in the middle of the night, inevitably in the middle of the night, and it's like, and we're always like, is there? No, it's a low battery. Okay, all right. Well, that's great. Sorry to scare all of you. So yeah, I think I go to the house.
I have a nephew who, when he was 6, learned how to perfectly mimic the little chirp that the smoke alarm does.
Yeah.
And would mess with his mom for days.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Like he'd make the noise when she was out of the room, and when he'd come in, he'd be quiet.
Yeah. I don't know what you're hearing. That's weird. That's so strange.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I think for us, it's a lot of like physical safety too. We live out in the country, so there's not a lot of people coming up and down our road, and so our kids are. I don't know that we actually ever trained them to do this, but they're very suspicious of cars going up and down our road because there's not a lot to come up and down our road for.
Right. So, I mean, all the cars that are supposed to be on your road by and large.
Right. And so for us, they're trained, like if they're playing outside, like it was almost to the not good, to a point that we had, our daughter would always run back in the house when there was someone even pulling up the driveway. So I think we might, Jason, are you still there? I think we might oh, you are still there. Okay. Your video's.
I am still.
Maybe.
I hear you.
I can hear you kind of. There you go. There's you're back. All right. So it was almost like a detriment where our daughter would like if someone even like pulled into the driveway, like run into the house. I mean, it was safe. I'm glad she did that. It was our younger daughter too. But even if we were like expecting somebody, she'd like run into the house and tell us, which is good. I mean, we appreciate that she does that, but.
Yeah, I will say it makes me feel special though today because I came over to your house to pick my chainsaw up, and she just came out and greeted me warmly. So I guess I'm right. I'm beyond stranger danger territory, which is good. So yeah.
And then I'd say too, we've also
that's actually a really that's a really good illustration of one of the situational awareness tactical things about descriptive events, right? Mm-hmm. Her baseline is people not driving on the street, on the driveway, or on the road outside. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you're paying attention tactically, what you're looking for is changes. So anything that's different from the norm, that's when you kind of, your spidey sense tingles, you start meerkatting around, or you go get your dad. So she's doing the right thing there.
She is, and she's still good at it. I mean, obviously now she knew Joel and knew he wasn't coming over to harm her
for a chainsaw massacre.
But we also have make sure one of my sons is here in the studio with us tonight, and he's very very methodical on every night. Like he'll check the door just to make sure that they're locked. Even if I've already done it and he knows that I've already done it, he'll go in there and just to make sure that they're locked. So we always do that. I'm for myself, I'm always locking the door as I go out, even if I'm going to be, even like on the way over here tonight, even though my wife is home, like I lock the door. I make sure that that's locked when I leave, just because I want them to be safe. I know that she can handle herself too, but I know that there's no reason that we need to put herself in danger if someone were to try to walk in. And so, I'm always constantly locking the doors.
Yeah. Well, you put your seatbelt on every time, even though you're not likely to get in a wreck,
right.
Even though you're a good driver. You lock the door when you leave, even if the person at home is also able to handle themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just good sense.
Yeah. So, Jason, this is your show too. So, anything you want to talk about tonight? This is the first time we've done a collaboration show, so I don't want to hog the whole show.
Yeah. So, I'd love to hear about what is worrying you guys or the other dads that you're talking to. What's bothering folks? What are some either things that you worry about you don't have a good solve for, or there's those myths of safety that are out there that are just wrong and actively harmful, and what are some that you hear over and over again that are bothering you? Since we're recording this just before Halloween, the myth of people tampering with Halloween candy is one that just gets my hackles up every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many times that a stranger has poisoned a child's Halloween candy and hurt them in a significant way since 1950?
Probably not very many.
Zero.
No times.
Yeah.
There was a stepdad who wanted more time with his wife, who poisoned his stepkids back in like the late 70s. And then there was that Tylenol poisoning thing in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a guy murdering his wife and setting it up to murder a couple of local people as well to make it look like it was a serial killer who got his wife.
Mm.
So a stranger tampering with your candy, let alone giving your child drugs, which are expensive.
Right.
It's goofy, right?
Yeah.
Where were all these guys distributing kids' drugs when I was in high school? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, for me, something I'm, I guess, worrying about is just like overall their safety. Like when, our kids are just getting to the point now where they're, my oldest is 16 and I have 3 other kids, all the way down to 6. And so my oldest 3 are just starting to, so oldest are 2 boys and then 2 girls. And so the oldest 3 are just starting to get to the point where they are starting to do more outside the home. Our kids were all homeschooled up until this last year. Last year, was their first year in public school. And so for me, I would say stuff that I worry about are things, like them going out more and staying out later. And I'm trying to not have irrational fears on that, because obviously things are going to happen and I can't necessarily protect them at all times. It's my job and I can teach them how to be safe in situations. But since this is just something they're starting to get into it a little more, it's like, okay, I got to let the reins off a little bit as a dad while still trying to teach them how to handle situations well.
And that's a really tricky thing to balance, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
And there's that idea that, we could keep our kids bubble wrapped, for as long as possible and then send them out into the world, but that doesn't teach them how to handle stuff on their own.
Right.
Where it sounds like you guys have had those conversations about, well, what would you do if?
Mm-hmm.
And you've had your conversations when you've had to discipline them in ways where they trust you as their safe place, so that if things get totally out of hand, they're going to come to you asking for help and not try to hide it from you because they know you're going to tan them.
Right. And that's one of the things that we've done too with the kids and their cell phones. The oldest 3 have cell phones, and we've said, again, at any time you can text us. Like Jason, like you said earlier, like no matter what the situation is, no matter where you're at, you can always call us, and if you need out of the situation, we'll come get you, no matter what. And so, that's one of the things we kind of drill through their head.
Yeah, it's been interesting here recently. And I won't name which kids. It's not an embarrassing thing, but it's a thing that you're like, that's interesting. So I opened up my laptop the other day, and there's a Wikipedia search for Jeffrey Dahmer on it, and I was like, that's interesting.
That wasn't me to search for.
Yeah, that was not me. And then I'm going to forget the guy's name. The other guy, this killed his family back in 2018 out in Colorado. Everything happens out in Colorado. I don't know what the deal is. It's like either middle Florida or Colorado. But
well, it's Colorado because they love guns and they love weed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so this guy, it was like he had like a mistress or whatever, and he had a wife and 2 kids, and she was expecting their 3rd child, and he killed all of them. And it was this whole it became this whole thing, and he ended up getting like multiple life sentences as he should have. But so I see like one of my kids is like looking these things up, like doing research on this, and I'm I have young children, and that honestly, I mean, it catches you a little bit off guard, and it's like, okay, how do we have a conversation about where did the interest in this come from? And first of all, how did you even hear about this? Yeah. I mean, in recent years and right now, like Netflix is heavy on the serial killers. Like that's been all in. And as someone who works in mental health a lot, and I have like a general interest in like criminal psychology and things like that, kind of like as a hobby, because it's just a matter of like, how do people's minds work, right? Like I get that. I'm interested in that. Even though it leads to, I mean, some really dark and terrible places and really horrible things. So it was a conversation that we had. It was like, hey man, wondering, just what drove you to all this? Like what made you interested in it? And basically what it comes down to is it's what those 2 individuals right now, because I think there's actually 2 Netflix, there's a series right now, Dahmer's the series, and then there's been an adjoining documentary, and then there was another documentary on this other individual that harmed his family, and it's what the kids are talking about in school. Like this is the conversation that they're having on a regular basis about these. I mean,
let's be honest too. Your kids, your oldest he's only
he'd be 13. So
right?
I have a 7th grader, 6th grader, and 3rd grader. Yeah. And the oldest, and then Molly, who's still she's a 1st grade and innocent, and well, again, youngest child, she can do no wrong. So I don't know, but yeah, it's but those are, I guess, those sort of fears. It's like, okay, what is like why, again, out of all the things that we could lift up and pay attention to, why is it why is it the mass murderers? Why is it the and we're amongst kids that are 11, 12 years old, and so I think there's probably a pretty significant concern on my end about like why all the attention and conversation around this. And there's a lot of other really notable characters in history that have contributed great things to our society, and not mass murder or cannibalism. So, just throwing it out there. We got some other options. Maybe look into those things.
Yeah, and leading by example is often the way to do that. By making sure that I was growing up, we had garbage pail kids, right?
Oh yeah.
Right,
kids are always going to be interested in the gross and the violent and the profane. It's just part of growing up. And so besides the whole murder podcast thing that has been a thing for about 10 years now, I'm married to a woman who's a huge fan of that. But besides that, I think there's always that fascination. And so like you're talking about making sure the conversation is not judgmental. And I liked how you kind of described it. Hey, buddy, can I ask? I'm curious more than anything else here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Although it is disturbing to think about like a middle schooler, that's the talk around for middle school.
Yeah.
Although what was it, 2 years ago, the 13 Reasons Why came out, and everybody was talking about suicide.
Yeah.
Yep. And those are, I mean, again, those, that those are going to be conversations eventually. My biggest concern is all just on their mental emotional development, meeting up with the topics at hand, and them having space and understanding to process those things. Versus it's like, I don't trust their peers to be the guiding force in that conversation.
No.
Not at all.
And I think it's important as parents too, so that we stay on top of, and we know what the things are popular. We know what people are talking about. So that way, Joel, obviously you kind of had the framework of going, okay, Netflix has this series going on. So you knew that whichever your kids were that were searching it probably weren't looking because they wanted to be a serial killer.
Right.
But you also were able to kind of just stay ahead of the curve and go, okay, this is something that they're talking about. So you know how you can address that, and it doesn't necessarily take you as off guard as it would if you were not. You just had your head in the sand.
Yeah, right. And we had it also led to another conversation around like hey, do you know what those Netflix specials? Do you know what they're rated? Do you know? And like trying to help him understand, because it's like, hey, do you know the shows that you guys watch that we allow you guys to watch? Do you know what the ratings are? Okay, and they're able to name that. And it's like, do you know what those Netflix ones are rated? And he's like, well, not PG. And I'm like, bingo. So what does that maybe say about
what? Yeah.
About the appropriateness of the content? I'm just trying to help them make the connections, because again, we're making these decisions for them now, but they are going to have to make them for themselves eventually. And so, give some parameters. Hopefully, it's helpful.
Yeah, I used to with my oldest. My youngest hasn't. He's for some reason hasn't really gotten very curious about the tough stuff yet. My oldest was very curious from very early, and I always tell him, "Okay, buddy, this is a class Omega conversation. I will answer you with 100% honesty. You cannot unhear the answer to that."
Yeah.
So are you sure you want to move forward with this question, or can we address it later? And about half the time he'd ask, and I'd tell him as honestly as I could. And then sometimes he'd go, "Oh man."
Yeah.
But you address it as openly, as honestly as you can. Yeah. And I share your concerns that because of the internet and because of the ubiquity of content, I think our kids are being exposed to really disturbing things way earlier than they need to.
Agreed.
And I don't think we can put that genie back in the bottle. So I think we just need to be prepared to deal with the ramifications of that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk a little bit about safety in public places. We've talked about at home. We've talked about let's talk about safety in public. Jason, I'll let you start. How do you keep your family safe while you're in public?
So we have systems in place. Right. I got the advice of a couple of very high-end bodyguards. When I say I did some bodyguard work, this was like driving a guy who owned a couple of restaurants on dates because he wanted the girl to think he was important enough to have a bodyguard, kind of stuff, right? But I have some mentors and friends who are high-functioning people in that area, and they gave me some very good advice about kind of applying squad tactics to your family at appropriate ages.
Okay.
For example, there's a concept from a guy named Tom Pateri called security blanket. When you're with your partner and your kids, one adult, or if you're with your teens, like the oldest kid is blanket, and then the adult is secure, and the other one is security. Blanket is responsible for the safety of everything within the family. You're making sure the shoes are tied. You're making sure everybody's crossing the street together. You're checking to make sure if anybody's hungry or needs to go to the bathroom. And then security is responsible for everything outside the family. So you're checking traffic. You're making sure that those two young men over there are walking their own way and not suspiciously near you. You're paying attention to the map or the GPS or whatever. And just is an example of how to kind of formally communicate with and divvy up the security and safety responsibilities of the family.
Gotcha. Joel, how about yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm trying to think of the things that we try to pay we try to pay attention to when we're out and about.
Mm-hmm. I'll go ahead and start. I don't know that I do the greatest job all the time, but I try to pay attention to what's going on around our family too. Eli, that's here with us tonight, will probably say no. There was one time we were walking downtown Philadelphia, and we were like, there's a homeless guy that was talking to somebody else, and I kind of was making a quick beeline around him because I was like, I don't want to have this conversation.
Yes.
And he like stepped out in front of Eli, and Eli was like, and then later was like, "Thanks, Dad, you left me here."
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
So that was one of the things that I don't maybe necessarily do the best at. But Eli, what did you say here?
Oh, I just said that guy grabbed onto my arm. I'm like, I don't want to.
Oh,
So yeah.
oh no.
So yes, that was one of the things I think that I do for safety out. I'm always, like you said, Jason, I'm looking for things that are abnormal to kind of try and avoid those. Now, when they are abnormal, I don't necessarily handle them the right way, but I do try to look for those type of things out, and kind of avoid those.
Yeah, I guess on my end, I would say, we're always looking for. Well, if we've told our kids this, and this we've said overtly, like, hey, it is way harder for someone to harm you guys if you are all together versus you being split up or at distance or whatever from each other. And I have to tell and again, my eldest Aaron will hear this. He how shall I say this? He does not naturally gravitate toward being aware of others around him. And so we've had just overtly say, like, Aaron, you cannot walk away from your brother and sister when we're out. Like, if mom and dad are like focusing on dealing with something here, you can't just like be like, oh, okay, guys, I'm gonna do my own thing. Like you have some responsibilities, which I think is, like you said, it's starting to impart those, especially on, Aaron is getting to the point here when he turns 13. I have some things specifically that he and I will do to kind of to usher him into his early manhood and to like kind of put a flag in the sand a little bit to say, okay, and now we're going to have these kind of conversations about your responsibility to the family, which will come with there'll be benefits to this. There will be, there'll be things, but part of it is going to be like, I need you to think of yourself as a little bit more of a protector of, especially your youngest sister and things like that, and just be more aware. That's the big thing. I think when we're out in public, it's like, guys, like you fly in formation. I just need you to stay in formation and not get separate, which is always a fun thing.
I think too, like my older two, the boys do a pretty good job at taking care of their sisters too. Like if there's something's awry when we're out, especially, like they're going to take care of her. They're going to look after them. They're going to make sure that they're taken care of. So that's
what Eli was thinking. Wouldn't it be fun if we went like if we did like we planned like a surprise ambush and just see how you guys reacted. We just take you out into public and we like your dad and I just like we just put people in place just to try to like snag Hattie on the run. That'd be a good time. It'd be terrifying and probably traumatic, but we could really learn some things.
Man, let's not.
I mean, you do fire drills, so why not? Why not that?
Yeah, we're doing a kidnapping drill today, kids. Be on the lookout.
Don't be alarmed. Maybe that's not a good idea.
Well, bad decisions lead to good stories.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know what? If I was a real friend, Andy, here's what I would do. I wouldn't even tell you. I would just follow you guys and then try to kidnap one of your children, and we would have a learning experience.
Oh, that'd be terrible. Let's not do that.
Eli thinks it's a great idea. He's dying over here. That's great. Good.
All right. So, Jason, when you're teaching safety to people, or you're talking about safety, what are some of the things that we may have not talked about tonight that we need to be aware of?
So one of the big ones is how bad an idea stranger danger turned out to be, and why we should not teach it under any circumstances. Are you guys hip to this?
No. Oh, I'm intrigued because we always joke about stranger danger. It's like it's like a joke, but we don't really know where that comes from.
So it came out in the 80s around the same time as Just Say No, and was another well-intentioned, completely ineffectual thing. And what they found out was, so first of all, don't talk to strangers is bad advice because the adults don't follow that advice ever. Because we're talking to strangers constantly every time we buy something at the supermarket, right?
Sure.
We're not modeling it. Another thing is that because of the way strangers were described in classrooms and by parents at the time this came out, there was this disconnect about what a stranger was. There was a study where they had kids draw pictures of strangers, and they often had horns and fangs. And another study where they would give kids, don't talk to strangers, don't go with strangers education. And then during recess, have strangers approach them and lead them off of the playground with like 95% success rates. And when the kids were asked later, why did you go with that stranger? The answer was usually something along the lines of, well, he wasn't a stranger, he was nice.
Oh.
Yeah. And then on top of that, if our child needs help, they have to talk to a stranger. Because if there's an adult they know around, they don't need help, they're getting help.
Right.
So don't talk to strangers if your kid gets separated from you at the fair, or they take a left at the mall or what have you, or they get lost in the woods or whatnot. That leaves them with very few resources to participate in their own rescue.
Sure.
And so the better thing to talk to our kids about is, okay, if you can't find us, what's the best, safest stranger to approach?
That's good.
Right? And that starts with the stranger you approach will be safer than the stranger who approaches you. Just from the laws of motivations. And then the second one is go find an adult with children. For the little kids, when I was teaching my karate school, that would be, if you can't find your family, find someone else's family. And that might be a mom with their kids, a dad with their kids, a couple with kids, might be an older sibling with younger siblings, it might be a nanny with their kids, an uncle taking the kids out on a date. But whatever that constellation is, that is statistically very safe for a child to approach for help. And also the adults in that group will probably be highly motivated to help reunite a child with their adults. Right? I mean, if a kid came up to you when you were with your kids, like crying, I can't find my daddy. It's record scratch. The plan for the day is over now. The plan for the day is now helping this guy.
Yep.
Right.
Right. Because as a parent, as a parent, you know that fear. And so you're like ready to
You have
go
a
into
high
action,
empathetic response.
Yeah.
Very, very high empathetic response.
Exactly.
It does make me think of a scenario. We were at a football game, junior football league game a few weeks ago. And there's a little girl who's like standing off by herself, just crying. It's like that scene, like just crying. She's lost her mom in the field of parents that are watching the game. And but I thought to myself, like, now another mom's radar went off, saw the little girl, went and approached her, and they found mom after just a minute of searching. But there was that experience with that little girl of she just froze.
Yeah.
And didn't feel that she could approach anybody. Her only response, which is terrible, is to stand. It was like to stand in the middle of a walkway, just crying.
Well, honestly, we had that same experience this year at a football game too. Like,
okay.
There was a girl crying and like frantically, like she found somebody else to go, talk to, or someone else saw that and came up, and then we ended up, me and my wife, going and trying to find other people. Like, the girl was old enough to know that like who her grandma was, or her grandma's first name, and so like my wife is starting to put two and two together as far as, okay, I think I know who this lady is that her grandma is. Yep. And so we went up to the announcement booth and we're trying to talk to him and figure it out. But yeah, Jason, to your point, like finding somebody who has like a family is a great thing because they're highly motivated. Like as soon as I saw that girl crying, I was like, oh no, that could be my daughter.
Yeah, sure.
And so for me, I immediately sprung into action.
Yeah, that's from a book called Protecting the Gift. It's the follow-up to Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear. And it is the best advice about how to talk to our kids about strangers. And then what we can do is to get a little older. When you're in a restaurant, for example, you can just sit down and say, hey, if I wasn't here, if you walked into this restaurant looking for me and had to ask one of the people here for help, who would you ask? And then talk about it, right? And as I get older, okay, which of these people will you not ask? And then talk about that. And those are some ways to kind of to get your kids involved in seeing to their own safety, of looking at the world in a way that not only identifies the trouble spots, but also, you're sitting down there in Red Robin with your kids and say, okay, who here would be helpful to you? They'll look around and 90% of the people in the room would be safe to approach and a good idea to approach. And they get to see that too. Like Mr. Rogers used to say, look for the helpers.
That's good. That's good. Joel, any questions we want to talk about?
I'm trying to. I think you've talked about all the things. I'm trying to think about what is the scariest the scariest situation that your kids can really find themselves in? I'm just trying to think of like if we've had any instances of real of some sort of level of danger or peril where like even like water safety. This is like that was another thing. So we live out here by Lake Michigan. It's not too far away from us. Lake Michigan is the deadliest of all of the Great Lakes, primarily just because the most people are in Lake Michigan, and we've got some good. What's the rip? It's the rip, like the riptide and things that will happen occasionally.
And isn't it? It's straight up hypothermia water too, and
it's pretty cold.
Oh yeah. It will be. Yeah, the good portion of the year, if you fall out of a boat in like the deeper water, you're even if it's like warm weather or whatever, you could be in trouble.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where now there was a whole other situation where we knew going out into the water or whatever that periodically this can happen, and it was like it was a conversation about. So I think this scenario applies to other things where there's a particular tactic that there's some awarenesses of knowing when it's happening. Number one. Tactics that you use if you find yourself caught in one, and what you should do and what you should not do. The biggest thing is you don't fight. Like in the rip current thing, you swim hard parallel with the shore as opposed to trying to just swim directly back to the shore. That's why people die. It's basically because they're so exhausted they end up drowning. And I think so we were in a situation where we were in very, very shallow water at the beach like things were fine, and all of a sudden I'm only up to, I don't know, probably just my little bit below my waist, and all of a sudden I'm getting like when the water's going back out, like it's pulling me hard. And that's what I literally just looked at all my children right then and there who are all getting into the water, and I just went out. and we were done right then and there, and how quickly it happened. But I thought to myself, if one of them had been in that situation, like I was aware of it because I was like looking for it and paying attention to it. If one of them had been in a situation like that, would they have gone to the training? Because so much of what you're talking about really is having the conversation ahead of time, being proactive, where their response is not panic, but rather there's a training to it. They go to a course of action, just like any military person does, just like any person that's in a particular. I've watched pilots when things go wrong in an airplane or whatever. They go to their training like immediately, a machine, And there's I think a point of that where it's kind of trying to figure out what your kid is ready for in that line of. Hey, in this situation, these are real potential dangers that things have actually happened. I'm not making this stuff up. So if this happens, just like you said in the restaurant scenario and all of that, hey, what would you do? How would you handle that?
Well, and I think what I've heard throughout this whole conversation tonight is training, questioning, repeating. Like that's the goal here, because you're gonna train them how to do something. You're gonna ask them how to do it. I know maybe not set up mock kidnapping like Joel said, but
it was a joke. Okay, first of all, some people are like, Joel's really twisted that he came up with this all on his own. I'm just saying.
But that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing training them, repeating them, repeating it to them, as well as going through mock situations, and then retraining them again and again and again, because I think it's been proven over and over and over again that when there's a situation going on, like you're either going to fight or flight, and I think that like if you're not trained in that, you're going to panic and not know what to do, and then that's when you're going to be getting in trouble, because you don't know what to do if you have not done that repeating, and like you said, Jason, being at a restaurant and say, okay, if I wasn't here and you couldn't find me, who do you trust? Like kind of quizzing them on that over and over and over again, so that way when they're in that situation, they know immediately, okay, Dad and I have worked through this situation before. This is who I go to, and they do.
Yep.
Yeah. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training.
Mm-hmm.
There are extraordinary, right? There are extraordinary stories of people rising to the occasion, but they're extraordinary stories. they're not what I'm going to count on for if my kids need to participate in their own rescue.
Yeah.
Yep. That's I think that's the thing. Maybe for our listeners, just as a consideration for your family, what are the conversations you need to have about real potential dangers, whether that natural disaster, fire, getting separated in public, home security, things like that, or if there's if there are particular dangers on. Maybe on your property, maybe there are some very specific things that are specific to where you live. Maybe go through that list and then have a conversation appropriate to the level of where your kids are at age-wise. I think that's probably one of the big takeaways I think here for this conversation is just to think about that. So many of the things that we talk about, Andy and I talk about, as I'm sure it is with you, is just slowing down for a second and kind of considering the things that we would normally overlook in our daily lives, and just paying attention to that and having a conversation about it, because that can make all the difference, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been
Absolutely.
this has been a great conversation. Jason, do you have anything else you'd like to put in here? I think we've talked of a lot of stuff.
Just the last one. One of the most important pieces of advice that surprised me a little bit, but once I thought about it, went, oh, duh, is one of the best things we can do for the safety of our kids is volunteer at their schools. Go coach the chess team, go cut out art supplies in the back of the classroom. And if possible, don't just volunteer in their classroom. That way you get to know the layout of the school, you get to know the people of the school, they know your face, they become more likely to intercede on your child's behalf. It's easier if you need to go and talk to a principal because maybe your child had to stop a bully. And in a lot of schools, the person who stops a bully, in theory, gets in as much trouble as the child as the bully. Unless you're the guy who coaches the wrestling team and the chess team and comes to all the PTA meetings and takes the principal aside and says, dude, really?
Yeah.
And there's so many advantages to just taking the time, making the time to volunteer in some way at your school. It's, it's not nearly as much fun as, getting on the mat or going to the range, but it is much more concrete, good work towards the safety of your kids and the other kids in your community.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah. Before we're going to do two things before we let you go. We're going to do the pop quiz, but I would like to also tell our listeners where you can find your podcast at, and then we'll tell you.
Safest Family on the Block. Safest Family on the Block. It's on YouTube, and just go there, and you can find. We're in our 9th season right now.
Okay.
Our 9th season, and you can find everybody from parenting coaches to mental health specialists to special forces guys. One of my more interesting ones was a guy who spent his early career in Marine Force Recon, and then the second half of his adult career as a administrator and teacher in public schools.
Oh, wow.
He has he has a unique viewpoint on school safety.
I bet.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been just very, very, very surprised and pleased by the quality of people who have wanted to come on the show.
Great. That's awesome. And for us, you can find us at dudesanddadspodcast.com or YouTube or any other place that podcasts are at, like
the Spotify's, the Apples, the places where you stream your stuff. Check it out.
We're there. All right. So before we let you go, though, we're gonna do the Dudes and Dads pop quiz.
It's time for Dudes and Dads pop quiz.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
All right. So this is a time where we just randomly ask questions. We'll ask questions. We'll let you ask questions to us. It doesn't necessarily have to do with safety, just to get to know you better. So, Joel, you want to kick it off?
I am. Okay, Jason, here we go. What are you most excited about right now?
What I'm most excited about right now is that I'm shipping the first batch of books from, in fact, here, let me...
here we go.
This book right here. This book right here.
There you go.
There I was when nothing happened.
Awesome.
I got 50 violence professionals, the cops, soldiers, spies, bouncers, martial arts experts, each to share a story about a time that they avoided violence through de-escalation, situational awareness, avoiding injury through rapid flight. And it's come out really well, and the people who participated blow my mind, and it's getting good reviews on Amazon. I'm just really jazzed about the whole thing. I'm heading out on the second leg of the book tour later this week.
Nice.
So, well, you know what? We'll make sure we get that on the show notes for sure.
Yes,
Jason,
definitely.
For sure. So
definitely.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. My first question is, if you could send a message to the entire world, what would you say in 30 seconds?
In 30 seconds, I'd say come listen to more podcasts with smart people
Awesome.
talking about important things.
That's good.
Because there's a lot of information out there, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason, who is your favorite hero of fiction?
Favorite hero of fiction is Horatio Hornblower.
Oh,
I don't know. Did either of you ever read his Tall Ships Era Sea Captain? Written in the 19th century, I want to say. And his thing is that he always pulls it out. He always succeeds. But his internal dialogue the entire time is how morbidly afraid he is of screwing it up. So he'll be striding the decks, firing things, giving orders, and thinking in the back of his head, if I lose this battle, I'm going to lose my commission. I'm going to be on shore on half pay, and my wife's going to have to be in a poorhouse, and just catastrophizing what would happen if he does wrong. And so then he does the right thing. And I think a lot of parents can identify with that.
Yeah. All right, Joel.
How am I screwing this up so badly?
you're up.
I just did it. That's mine.
Oh,
Oh no, you're right. Wow, I'm off tonight. What do you, when you die, what would you want to be remembered for?
Just for having left the place better than I found it in some particular way, especially just through my kids, my family. My family does not have a tree; we have a thicket. My oldest son was adopted. His mom became medically incapable of caring for him, and she was the foster daughter of my mom's best friend.
Oh, okay.
My youngest son was homegrown through a previous marriage, and now we have kind of a bonus son who's the half brother of the oldest son, whose parents died in a car wreck, and now he's come up here to go to college, and that's just a small microcosm of how brambly our family is.
I dig your story, Jason. I love it, man. That's beautiful. Yeah.
And just those guys. I hope they're out there in the world doing good.
Yeah. Jason, which living person do you most admire?
My grandmother, if that counts.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? She turned 100 this year. She was a pharmacist in the 30s and the 40s. Got divorced because it was the right thing to do back in a time when divorced women were not well thought of. Raised my mom and her kids. She lives across the street from me now in a retirement home and loves to play Cards Against Humanity. She's just full of piss and vinegar. And if I can carry on her legacy, have as well as she carried on her people's, I feel like I've done an okay job.
That's awesome.
Great. And then my last question is, when you think about success, what comes to mind and why?
Fulfilling my responsibilities. And because that's what brings me the most joy, looking at the people that rely on me and knowing that they're safe and okay and going to go off and take care of themselves.
Great. Do you have any questions for us?
Absolutely. Okay, gentlemen.
Right.
When was the last time you were in a mosh pit?
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Let's see. This would have been September 1999.
Whoa. You even given a month.
Yeah, I was in
What show?
It was an MXPX show.
Oh, that's it.
And let me see. I was in the dirtiest club that I've ever been in Toledo, Ohio. Holy smoke! We walked out of the club after it was all done. We took our shirts off and just threw them in the trash. That's how bad it was. It's true punk rock.
I don't know if this one was my last time, but it was probably my most memorable time. I was at this concert and it was so hot and so sweaty, and they're like, sweat was condensing on the air conditioner and falling. It was disgusting. But
Yes.
I got taken out by security because they said that I punched somebody, which I didn't do. How are they going to tell? I had a headband on, but a bandana, but like I did not punch.
And he's a
anybody.
lover. He's not a fighter. They should know that. Yeah.
And actually, funny fact, that same concert, near the end, someone had pulled the fire alarm in the building. So they exited everybody out, and there's a recording of it, and you can hear at the very end of the recording, like on the live album for this concert.
That's fantastic.
And like you can hear, so the fire alarm's going off. There's exits here and here and here. It was great.
Yes.
All right. And favorite books?
Oh
Oh my gosh. Oh, you know what? My favorite, honestly, recently my favorite book has been, and this, I read this just a little while. Well, it's a little while ago now. Is Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey. All right. I dug that book. I really did. I thoroughly enjoyed it at multiple levels. So that's what I'm gonna say right now.
So for me, it would be any book about the Enneagram. I'm a big Enneagram person. I love the personality types of the Enneagram. So I've dug, reading about others, reading about myself, and then my son Eli wants to answer this question too. So
My favorite book series is the Wingfeather Saga. It's a fantasy fictional book. It's really great.
The Wingfeather Saga.
Yeah.
All right, check it out. All right, very cool.
I will recommend that to my boy. He's wrapping up Rick Riordan's entire body of work, so he's going to be looking for some more fantasy. Wing Saga, wing like a dragon or
like
plane.
Wingfeather.
Wingfeather Saga.
Okay. Wingfeather Saga.
Yeah.
Okay, epic. I will check that out. Very cool. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
This was really fun.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and end the recording here, and then yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, Joel, that was such a great episode.
Man, I'll tell you, one for the ages. So many things to think about. Hope it was helpful to everybody. Yeah. And as always, guys, you can catch us over at dudesanddadspodcast.com. And show notes, all the good stuff.
All of those good things. And if you would like to send us feedback, it's just at 574-213-8702 is our voicemail number. It's a voicemail number. You're not going to interrupt Joel or I's sleep.
Nope. Thank you for that. Yeah. Dudesandadspodcast at gmail.com with all of your helpful emails and the non-helpful ones too.
We love them.
We love them. Thanks so much. As always, guys, you can like us, share us, all that. Appreciate everything. And so, yeah, until next time, we wish you
grace
and peace.